G'day, welcome to David Joshua Forward Live. This is episode 121. Today we're talking about expressions in Companion version 4. Last week we talked about variables, so this is kind of a part 2 of that and going into more depth on that. You might want to go back and watch that. So we're going to take a look at what are expressions and where to use them. So if you're just getting started with some of the more technical things of Companion, today's show hopefully will give you a foray into that, so you don't get freaked out by expressions, because they can get really intense, but there's also some really simple formats of expressions, and I think once you know what they are, where you can use them, and just some use cases for buttons and triggers and things that you might want to build into your live stream, then there's a lot of power and a lot of value that comes from understanding expressions. And I think once you get the hang of the first couple of them, you can sort of teach yourself and learn from there. So we want to tackle that today, and that's what we are going to take a look at. So let's take a look at part 1, and we're looking at what are expressions. They can contain arithmetic, logical operations, conditional. So they're different, whereas a variable is it's like a number or a string. A expression is within that variable a sort of whole like math operation. So, is this value greater than that, true or false? Or, does this equal this? And then it can return the value or the number of that you can then take an action on, or you can display. So you could show, for example, you could work out what's the time of day minus the time difference that I want to work out, and that will show me a clock in terms of the amount of time left in a segment or in a show. So there's many ways in which you can use that. To get started, let's take a look at where to find the documentation for expressions, because this will help. This is within Companion itself. If you open up Companion, and in the bottom down here, Getting Started, click on this guide here. This is locally available here, but you can also look at it on the web if you're logged in to the BitFocus website. And if you just go halfway down to secondary admin controls, this is where you have your variables, and you'll have expressions down here. I'll just clear this page because I had that. So this is where you're going to find all of the details that you can refer back to when you're building an expression and trying to figure out why it doesn't work, is also what that is. All right, so let's take a look at basic expressions. So these are things like arithmetic, Boolean logic, or something that's conditional, ternary. And if I come over here are some examples. So basic arithmetic can be like, value A plus value B is going to give a new value. Or Boolean logic, like if something is greater than something else, is that true or false? Conditional is going to be if it is this, if it is greater than, for example, in this case, 0, then give me one value, otherwise give me something else. And I'll show you how to use this later on. I'm just going to sort of go through all this to give you a bit of an idea of what things we're going to be looking at, and then we're going to go into some more practical use cases. You can use functions such as like rounding a value up or down to a certain number. If you ever want to put text within an expression to display, then you can use these backticks, dollars, and then I think they're parentheses, whatever that parentheses is. And then in between there, like decibel, for example, this would return whatever custom value A is, say that was 30, or like -30, maybe this would return it as -30 dB. So you could have an audio value in there. You can put it across multiple lines, and you can also add in end-of-line comments or block comments. Number of literals, dynamic, and custom variables. Let's take a look at operators. So these are things like ternary, binary, unary, expression, grouping, and objects. Really nice list here just to refer back to. So A, B, if not C, or binary operations, plus, minus. It's good to know things like a double equals can be if one function equals a string, and you might need to use like a loose rather than a strict equality variable here in terms of 2 or 3. And greater than, less than, unary operators, expression grouping in parentheses, a plus b multiplied by c, objects, you can define arrays, and also some temporary values. Just quickly going through this. Numeric operations, so you can have a string that you are doing an operation on, so you might want to round it up or down to like the floor or the ceiling, or work out the absolute value of something or the maximum or minimum in a string. So where was that? Functions. Okay, so for example, if you go length, parentheses, and then insert your value in here, remember that can be like a whole lot of variables and that kind of stuff, this will return the length of that. Or you could round the numbers to the nearest whole number, you can round it down to the nearest whole number, round it up, get the absolute value of a number. This is useful sometimes if you want to get just like a positive integer rather than ending up with some negative number. Maybe you're just looking at the difference of something and you just care about that number rather than whether it's negative or positive. And it's coming down to here, working out if it's a number, log operations. Next up we've got string operations. So trimming it or finding the string length, splitting it up, joining it together, combining variables, working out if something is included, converting text to all uppercase or lowercase, so some of that can just be sort of formatting type things, replace all, and then the one that I end up using a fair bit is parseVariables, which is kind of calculating what is like a variable that's within a container so that you can then use that number within another function elsewhere. So let's go down here, string operations. So again, these are always using, for example, trim, parentheses, and then putting your value within there. Finding the length of a string. Split is useful. You can work out what's in your string and then comma, whatever the separator is. You can join an array. You can combine more values into a single string. So that could be like, adding, even just like a number keypad, like you might have on you could create a, 1 to 9 and 0 and have buttons where you're using concat to build a larger number from a keypad is how you could use that one. Converting it to uppercase, lowercase, replace all, encoding or decoding, and parseVariables. This is an important one. So I'll read this out. In some cases, you may need nested variables in the evaluation. For example, like a variable within another variable, and it does not support that. And so to do that, you need to first pass the variable so that it will then return a value that will work in that nested variable. All right, I'm going to jump down to time operations. This one's really useful. So this can take a timestamp like hours, minutes, seconds, and convert it to seconds. So, instead of, 10:38 a.m. and 45 seconds today, then it could be whatever many thousands of seconds that is, and then we can do a math operation on that, and then we can convert it back to a timestamp. So that's the way that we can go from timestamp to seconds or seconds back to timestamp. And also the one that I quite like in here is the time difference. Let me go down to time operations. Okay, so you can get the Unix time, you can get timestamp to seconds. So for example, 1015 gives 615, and you can also reverse this with seconds to timestamp. You can work out the format, so you could just pull out the seconds. So for example, you might have buttons where rather than having the full time on one button, it gets way too small. If you want to just pull out the hours, minutes, seconds separately, you could make bigger buttons on the screen. And then the one that I quite like is this time difference. So it's going to take the number of seconds between two timestamps. So this is where you could have a countdown to the end of the show, which I'll show you how to sort of build that. and you're working out the difference between the variable, which will be the current time of day, and this duration that you have set. All right, let's take a look at part 2, and we're looking at where to use expressions. So this is getting a little more fun when you get into Companion itself. So if we want to take a look at expression variables, this is new to Companion 4, and it enables us to pre-calculate an expression that can be used elsewhere. So you can do a whole math operation and bundle up that value into what is essentially another variable that you can then paste into button feedback or into text fields and that kind of thing. So if we jump over to Companion, in Companion, in this sidebar, you'll see under variables, we've got expression variables. If you click on that, you can now create, add an expression variable like this. You can give it a name, new expression. Oops, you need no spaces. New expression, and you'll see down here, this is now the what you would copy to paste elsewhere. So dollars parentheses expression semicolon new expression is, I can just click that and I've copied that. So now whatever this value ends up being will show up wherever I paste this elsewhere. So we can see here, if I go, I guess if 1 equals 1, those are not true. If 1 equals 1, excuse me, then that is true. I am using it in this function here, which I'll show you, which I have elsewhere an input array of, I'll show you over here. So I have a custom variable called ATEM input array, and I've just put in a list of ATEM input numbers. So this one looks like a, what's that, a 2ME or something. So these are all the index numbers of an ATEM, just separated by commas. And then I can, over here, use this split function. So if I say split, and so if I take off this length function, and delete that, you can see it'll return all of these numbers here. So I've split out the, I'm saying it's separated by a comma, is that the quotation comma here. But then I'm also adding in like this length function. So I want to say, what is the length of this? I'm basically saying, I have a list of ATEM inputs, and I want you to tell me how many ID numbers I have in that list being separated by commas. And so I can see that I've got 47 in there. And so it means if I come over here and if I just, for some reason, added in like a comma, let's see if it's already gone to 48, you know, 1030 or something, like I'm adding in another ME, then I have another input number. So, and then I can use this expression, where are we? Input array elsewhere to, if I want to know how many ATEM input numbers I have. All right. Hopefully that one made sense. Just close that one up again. The next place that you can use that is quite simply in a button text field. So you could be familiar with Companion if you come in here and you create a button and you put in a value like 1, it's going to show up as 1 on there. Let's give it a color so we can keep track of it. And if you hit this button here, it's going to change from a text field to an expression mode. And so now I could go 1 plus 2 equals 3. If I turn that back to text, you can see it's just going to show up as that plain string of 1 plus 2. But that's where if I convert it to an expression mode, then it's going to actually return the value of this expression. And you can then replace that with things. So for example, I'm trying to work out what the point of this button would be, but I have a custom variable for my ATEM. I've got 3 ATEMs, and so I have a custom variable, called ATEM, which is going to return a value of 1, 2, or 3. So if I delete this, I can see that currently I'm controlling ATEM1, his custom variable number 1. But if I went plus 1, oops, where are we? 1 plus shift, then it equals 2. And so now on my Stream Deck, if I went over to my ATEM, and instead of it being ATEM1, I went to ATEM2, then you can see that the variable is now essentially 1 plus 2. So that is another way that you can sort of start to build those into your text fields. All right, next up is step expressions. This one's really cool because it gives a lot of flexibility to manage a lot of functions and many steps in a way that's much more efficient, I think. So this is using an expression to determine a button step rather than automatic or manual. And for example, this is how I control my ATEMs. So under, what would be a good one? Because I will explain this more later. But here I have a button to control the ATEM input number 1 across 3 different ATEMs. And so each of my 3 ATEMs has its own step, 1, 2, or 3. By default, when you start a button, it's going to be on auto. You can set it to manual and then have button presses and functions that will manually move the step to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever you want. Or you can set it, you can define it as an expression. So you can see here that number 1 is pulsing because my ATEM1 is selected, and this variable is saying if my custom variable ATEM slot alter is essentially empty, because I've got these quotation marks, then give me the value of this custom ATEM, which is going to be 1, 2, or 3, tabs 1, 2, or 3. Otherwise, give me number 4, which is sort of an operational mode that I have built to be able to change the input of the ATEM very easily. So this is what is being returned here. And so if I, on my ATEM, instead select ATEM number 2, you can see now number 2 is pulsing, meaning that when I press this button, it's going to actually fire only what's on step 2. And you can see down here, all of these functions are relating to ATEM number 2, whereas over here I've got ATEM number 1, ATEM number 3. So this makes it easy for me to be able to control, or essentially to build a button to control functions on one ATEM. And once I've got it working the way I want it, I can just come to this duplicate step button. So it will just make a duplicate of the step. And then I can just go through and select, instead of ATEM1 is what it would be on, I could select them all to ATEM2. And likewise duplicate it again and make it to ATEM3 is turned off at the moment, so there's nothing there. So essentially now I have this one button that can control 3 ATEMs depending on what custom variable is selected, and it's being determined by this expression in this step progression expression field here. All right, then we got the hang of that. Let me just make sure I'm back on ATEM1. All right, you can also set expressions in the button actions section. So this is like the press and release, or short, or long press, or module variable. Sorry, this is old one. So you can set that using an expression. So I'm going to come back over here. Over here. So if you create a button and you go set with expression, set with expression, and you can set a custom variable or a local variable with expression. I'm just going to use set with expression. This is where you could work out, you can make a change to a variable using an expression. So I'm trying to think of something I've already built here. Not 2 equals 1. Where was it? This one. Okay. So I have, in my run of show here, I have these Q buttons, which is advancing a Q up or down. So I'm essentially got 24 Qs, and they could be numbers 1 to 24. And so this button here is saying, set the expression custom Q, and then I'm also using custom Q. This is old terminology. This should be custom Q. And -1. So this expression is basically feeding back into itself. So it's saying the variable Q might equal 8 or something. And then when I run this action, it's going to go -1 from itself. So I'm using that variable within that variable. Similar to that is, hopefully I got this right. So in the button action, rather than just putting a straight set expression with set a variable with an expression, you can place that variable with an expression within a logic statement. So this means that it will only run if that's true or false. So the one that I had, and I think I explained this last week, but I'll jump back into that media player over here. So I have media player buttons here that are pulling up ATEM media pools, and I've built in functionality so that you can you can turn on a mode so that when you select a button, it will push it up onto air in the downstream key. So that's good for things like, make sure I'm on the right one here. So I need to turn on this one. So I've turned on this mode, then I should just be able to hit, I'm going to change my graphic here, that wasn't so good. I've got my Supersource in there, all right. Let me see if I've got, okay, so this is now the downstream key, and you can see that would be useful for a lower third to be able to automatically put it on. And likewise, I have a timeout mode here where you can select a number of certain seconds, and it will automatically, after a certain number of seconds, take the graphic off screen. But I don't want to press the next button and then it selects it and also takes the downstream key off air. And so what I need over here is something that is going to conditionalize it so that if it is on air, then it is not going to run. So that is, where is it? This one. So I've got this internal logic if statement, which is, it looks like this. So if you go to your action field and you go logic, it will look like this. And so it's saying when this condition, whatever we put on it, is true, then take this action, otherwise do this action. Often that one is left empty, but can be useful if you want to take an alternate action. Delete that. So I've got that already here. The action I'm taking here is to press another button. So I'm pressing this button over here, which is actually toggling the downstream key. This is kind of a back-end button that the user doesn't actually press, and it's only pressed if this mode is on, but also it's only pressed, sorry, if you press this button and the mode is not on, it won't fire because there's limits within this button. But also, each button that I'm individually pressing here will only trigger this if this is true. So I've got under when true, variable check Boolean expression. And my expression is if this variable equals this variable. So still selected and still SN selected. If I go to my local variables, and you can see that these are sort of compound variables that I've built in the local ones. So we've got still selected. So I'm basically getting, this is an ATEM variable, which would be ATEM1 media player index 1, for example. But instead of the ones, I'm replacing that with my custom ATEM variable, which could, so it means that this could relate to ATEMs 1, 2, or 3 that I have connected. and then the index number of the media pool could be 1, 2, or media player, it could be 1, 2, 3, or 4. We've got 4 media players here. And so I'm saying if that's value equals the value of whatever the local one is, then you can press it. Otherwise, this is not going to action. And so what it means is I can select something else and it will change this on air. But when I press the button that is on air again, it will actually take it off air. And now my graphic in the background is it's this one, Supersource. I need to replace that. Hopefully that helped. Hopefully that made sense. All right. Next up is on button feedback. You can have Boolean feedback, and this is a pretty powerful way of determining a true and false that you can then define button feedback. So the example I'm going to show you is I have built a whole bunch of ATEM buttons to control, input 1, 2, 3, 4. But there's some ATEMs that don't have inputs that other ATEMs have, and in which case, if it's unavailable, I want that button to be grayed out. And so I need an expression that is going to let me know if that ATEM is unavailable. So let's go to my page 17, and you can see here what I've got on ATEM input. This is the page here. Is my Constellation 2ME. So these are the first 10 inputs here, and I've got program preview and color bars and media player and black. But then up here I've got these 9001, 9101, 2, and 3, and these are actually multi-view input outputs. Are they inputs or outputs? I guess they're sort of inputs. That if this was an ATEM Extreme ISO would show up, because the ATEM Extreme ISO can output those inputs. I don't know if they're inputs or outputs. Whereas the Constellation 2ME that I have connected is not able to do that. So if I went to, and you keep watching up here, if I go to ATEM 2, now I'm showing on ATEM 2, I'm controlling ATEM 2, and these functions are now available to me. So, which is great because I can use them. If I go back to number 1, you can see that they're grayed out, and I know that they're unavailable when I'm controlling my Constellation 2ME. So let's take a look at this, and we're going to go to feedbacks, and we're going to go down here. So I've got ATEM buttons that have basically like a compound background style. So this is like a dark color that is red or green or blue, depending on if I'm controlling program preview or Supersource, upstream key inputs, that kind of stuff. And then I've got the specific ATEM feedback, 1, 2, or 3. And then I've got down here, this one we're going to look at, local input available equals NA, and then change the text here. So if I turn that off, that's what it would look like without this function, or if I invert it. But I want it cleaner, right? So local input available equals NA. So if I go to locals, input available, local input available, again, is this like compound variable, which is basically the short name. So I'm saying, I'm using from, let me go to up here, pull up another page, just so I can keep track of where I am. ATEM 1, if I type in name for, this is ATEM short. So this is ATEM 1, all the short names, right? And these all have index numbers, short 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, up to 20 on my 2ME, and then color bars is 1000, color 1 and 2 is 2001 and 2, and so on through the media player and the Supersource, and well, that's way up to the ME1 and ME2 inputs or outputs. I don't know what they are. Anyway, so that's kind of the structure that I'm using here. Remember, ATEM but then I'm replacing the 1 with my variable, and I'm replacing short with this local variable so that I can update it easily. So if I jump back over to here, I've got my local slot stored saying this is actually the index number of what I'm controlling here is 9001. And then input available, I'm saying if ATEM, in this case 1, has the short name short, and this would equate to 9001. And then I come back to feedbacks, and you can see here that this is actually going to be NA because the constellation 2ME doesn't have that, and so it's going to return a $NA text. And so I'm saying if that's true, if it does return a $NA, then I want to basically change these style parameters, and you could change the PNG and the text alignment and the size and all that kind of stuff. I've chosen just to make the background and the text really dark, so it's kind of grayed out. And then I've also changing the text from, this was the original text up here, which is the slot stored, which incorporated the ATEM, but in this instance, because that doesn't exist, I just want to use the slot stored. So remember, slot stored was local variables, 9001. So it just gives a reference that I know that, okay, well, you know, this is index ID 9001, but it's not available, so I can kind of ignore it. And visually, when I then look at my page over here, I know what buttons are available for me to push, and I'm not distracted by buttons that wouldn't actually fire if they were pushed. Okay, let me go back to here. We are on ATEM 1, so that is good. Button feedbacks. So you can also conditionalize that. I think I sort of explained that, so I might sort of jump over that quickly, but just briefly. If I go back to here, I guess that's not that one, but I will come back to that. I'm conditionalizing feedback on my ATEMs 1, 2, and 3. So the background style is like, that color works across the 3 ATEMs, but if I have an input 1, for example, let's come back over here, feedbacks, just close this down. Each of these ATEMs could be on input 1, and so I don't want that to show up if I am on ATEM 2. So if I am on ATEM 1, I only want to show ATEM 1 feedback, and so within this is the conditionalizing external existing feedbacks, which we looked at before for the taking a logic if taking an action, but you can also do this with the feedback that results at. So on the steps, that's where you're going to have the logic if it equals such and such, then take an action. And the feedbacks is going to be if this value is true, then show this on the button. So in this instance, I've got ATEM 1, which has custom, I'm saying check the value of this custom variable ATEM. If it equals 1, then show these feedbacks. And I've got a bunch of feedbacks here. And then I've got ATEM 2, which, let me just contract this down, is going to have the same ones on there. So the advantage of this is that it's once you've designed your button and you've thought about what you want it to achieve, you can actually just hit duplicate and then just change them all to like ATEM 2, you know. So you don't have to build all this from scratch. What you're building from scratch is your first one. So if ATEM 1 custom variable equals 1, then I'm basically saying, you know, if the Windows source is selected on ATEM 1, blah, 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 change it, like highlight the background to this color. And I'm just gonna close that down. So I've got that for multi-viewer, I've got that for the arts, feedback, Supersource, downstream key, upstream key, auxiliary, program preview. And so I've been able to put all of those input controls onto a single button. And it means that I can just have one page that is for all of the inputs that I have available. I can control where those inputs go to in terms of supersource, upstream key, downstream key, within a single page, rather than having to have multiple pages for multiple functions. So for each upstream key, for it to have its own page of buttons, it's just like you'd have these like massive profiles that become like take up a lot of real estate, but then also become harder to manage, and you just got like pages and pages of stuff. So that's why I kind of like, but yeah, and it's much easier too to then you can just fit a whole lot more on a physical piece of hardware. So that's part of the reason for this design process. So just know that you can limit whether feedback is shown by placing it within this internal conditionalized existing feedbacks container. All right, next up, you can change the text field. So this is kind of simple, but when we go back to, I'll use my ATEM example, which I sort of showed you before, but I just want to point out that this is available feedbacks. Where are we? So remember when we had the button that was going to be unavailable, and just by putting in this text field here, so this would be in the drop-down menu if I hadn't pre-selected it. This is changing the text here to local slot stored. But you can actually change that by clicking on it to make an expression. So just know that you can run a Boolean expression to check if something's true or not, and then you can change what's displayed on the button's text field either as text or as an expression just by clicking that button. You've sort of seen me doing this while I have been going through here, but similar to expression variables, you can actually sort of pre-calculate the value of a local variable to use elsewhere. So what I mean by this is this, for example, where are we? Canon 1. So this essentially boils down to custom ATEM is 1, I'm on my ATEM 1, and my local slot stored is 1. If I click on local variables, my slot stored is 1. This is input 1 on ATEM 1. So I'm saying here, ATEM 1's short name of index 1 is my Canon camera 1. And this can 1 is the label that is being pulled from the ATEM. So that's text that was set inside of the ATEM, and it's being pulled across dynamically. So if I changed the label of an ATEM, that would be updated in there. But if I click this to an expression, you'll see that it goes onto error. So expressions can't really do these compound variables where I'm trying to say, because really what I'm saying here is $ATEM1 short underscore 1 is what this should be reading out as from this longer one. So it can read, if I just X that, it can read that. See if I put in this, it's an expression. So we can read this basic expression, sorry, basic variable either as text, string, or as an expression mode. But when I use this embedded variable with embeddeds, it can't do it. And so what you can actually do is create a text variable, like a local text variable, to sort of pre-calculate it, and then you can use it not only in the button text field to show on a button text, but also in a Boolean expression to determine if something's true or false, and to take an action with that, or to determine to show feedback or not. So you'll see under local variables that we had this before. I was using this for input available. So I just created a user value. So if you click down here, I think it'll just pop up here, internal user value, and you can give it a name. So I had input available, and you can persist value so that it stays that value when you start up. Otherwise, it will return to the value that was set. So I've called it input available, and then the value is this compound one, local slot stored. And so I could actually, instead of this, X. I could go $local slot stored, and you'll see it is that right? That's not right. What was I going to say? Input available. Input. No, hang on a second. Input available. This one is giving me the name. The short name is what that rounds out to. And you can see whether this is an expression or text. It is reading it. I'm just going to put this back just for, this is how the other ones are. And so over on feedbacks down the bottom, you can see this is where I have used this local value, which is local variable, which is actually kind of a compound to work out if it's NA or not. Whereas if I put in that raw value of this, then it would have an error and it wouldn't actually function. Lastly, you can use expressions in triggers to take an action based on conditions. So for example, I use that to automatically trigger my live stream in terms of the pre-roll or show start sequence. So over here, if you go to triggers in the sidebar, you can see show pre-roll. I've got this event, so there's many different conditions you can set in terms of a button press or a time of day or sunrise, sunset of your location. I'm using, on a condition becoming true, the condition being check a Boolean expression. Check Boolean expression, this one. You can also check a value. But the Boolean expression that I've got in here is I'm saying, does my custom clock show pre-roll string, this variable, which is just one of the clocks that I set in here. So in my Stream Deck, I've got a clock page, and I can, I've got a pre-roll, show start, end show, and wrap. So this is, showing me I'm 42 minutes into my show here, and that we're going to end the show in 17 minutes if it's an hour-long show. And I've also built in the function to, if I press this button, you can see it's turning this trigger on or off. And essentially what I'm saying is when that equals 0, I think is what I'm saying. Is that equal? Or the pre-roll string, when this, whatever this is calculating out is when that equals the time of day, then, which is only going to for a moment in time, and then it's going to trigger. So that's just one example of how you could use that. And then I'm saying press a button, which is going to be my pre-roll on page 4. I'm saying press page 4 here, which is I have my pre-roll, show start, show end, and wrap. So it's going to press this button, and then it's going to trigger all of my starting my ATEMs and sending messages to YouTube, starting YouTube, all that kind of stuff. And so that helps me at the start of a show to be able to have clocks that I've set to a certain time, and I can change the show start. So for example, I normally start at 10 a.m. and I have a pre-roll at 9:55 a.m. and I can turn on my automatic trigger of that. And so when it gets to 5 minutes to 10 a.m., I don't actually have to press the button. Companion's going to do that for me. And so what that helps me time check, because it means I know that's enabled, I'm getting ready, I'm doing other things, and when it hits that 5-minute mark, my whole studio, like the lights and the cameras all change, and it gets into my first position. And so I'm like, okay, and I sort of focus, and then I know I've got 5 minutes until the show starts. And then I can also, if I want, have it execute that first cue to actually start the show. I can also have it to end the show, but I'm usually just doing that manually, so it's not something that I have in there at the moment. All right, almost done. We're going to do part 3, and we're going to look at some use cases here of how we're going to build expressions. And just to give you a bit of an idea of some of the ways in which I'm using them too, I guess. One that I did recently, which will be in the next update that I have coming to DGF5 when I am ready to release that, is an ATEM Photo Capture Timer. I had this previously, which was just using 1 second wait times in between text changes. And what I didn't like about that was it was very manual to change it. So if you wanted to go from a 5-second timer to a 10-second, like you had to do a lot of things. Whereas what I've got now is this one variable that can be changed. Let me go to MP. Have I got that one? Grab stills. Okay, I'm going to go to page 3. So this is a countdown timer to show feedback and also to take an action after X number of seconds. So I'm going to go over to, where are we? Over here, and I've got a copy of my button here. And let's just dissect this button. So this has got 3 steps. It's actually a manual step button. So by default, when Companion boots up, it's always going to be on step 1. So you've got to think about that when you're building a button. And I've got, you can add a duration group down here. And I've added in one for 300 milliseconds that is also going to execute while held. So it means that if I hold this button for more than 300 milliseconds, then it will actually execute. If I had this unselected, then it would only execute once I release my finger. So it'd be any time after 300 milliseconds onwards. So I'm going to cancel on that. And so I'm doing 2 things here. A short press is going to basically take a picture. So I want to, like, in the ATEM media pool, which I can see if I can pull this one up. While that is loading over here, media pool. Yeah, wrong button. Media pool. Okay, I've got a few empty slots, I guess. We'll see if we can pull it over here. So these would be stills that I can just get rid of some of these because I don't need all these. So 33 would be the next available slot. And so I could go to close up here, and I'm going to get my button here. And let me see if I can. Okay, so I'm going to smile. And then we go back over here, and you can see that that has filled in this. It's taking a picture on this one. But if you're a solo creator producer, you might want to actually, you know, have a timer so you can execute taking a still, but then get ready into a position. So for example, I can hold the button, but then I'm going to get into, I'm trying to think how I would show this on screen. It's probably better if I go, I'm going to get a mid shot. So I'm going to hold this, and then I got 5 seconds to get ready for a photo, all right? So it's going 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I can get ready for my thumbnail. Like that, okay. And so now when I go over to here, you can see that that has been captured here. So if I go to my, what was I going to? My media player, and where did that go? 15. I don't have that many buttons yet. I haven't. It's in 34. I'm just going to go. I was going to put, this is an old one. Oh, that's the wrong button too. Hang on. Let me see here. So this is an old one. But this is the one that we just took here. Beautiful. I love it. And let me just get back to here and get rid of that and get my screen back into shape. So that's a way that you can have a 5-second timer, but it could, you know, it could be 7, it could be 10 seconds. And let's take a look at how we have put this button together. So I'm saying if I have a short release, meaning a short press, move this set current step. So you'd be in here going set current step to step 2, which is going to be this one. And then also internal button, trigger, press and release this button, and also check force press if already pressed. Now, because I've pressed this, the button's already been pressed. So this action here is saying, once I've pressed it, set it to number 2, but then also sort of virtually press it again so that whatever is on step 2 will be executed. And then you can see here, if I hold it, then step 2 is not going to run. I'm going to instead jump straight to step 3 and execute that. Let's go to step 2. So we have essentially, where are we? Press and release. This button, I don't know why I got that in there twice. Oh, it's off actually. I can just delete that. I've got a logic statement in here just because I've got 3 ATEMs, but it doesn't have to be that complex if you've got just 1 ATEM. Essentially what I'm saying is if I'm on my custom ATEM preset number 1, then do ATEM media player capture still. So the action you would be looking for is capture still. So ATEM 1 media player capture still, depending on which ATEM you want to target. And so this, oh, and then there's also at the end, set this step back to 1. So we've gone a loop. So if it's a short press, it says go to 2, execute 2, and then come back to 1. So that's take a picture straight away. Remember, if we held it down, it was going to go to step 3. And so step 3 also has 3 ATEMs in it. But we only need to look at ATEM 1 and also the 2 before it. So what I've got now is a local variable. I've created 2 local variables, one called time capture, which is sort of a timestamp, I guess, of whatever the local time is. So you can see the last time I fired this was at 11:18. It's now 11:21, that's like 3 minutes ago. And also here is the duration, which is 5. So I'm saying 5 seconds is how long I want it, but I could make it, 7 seconds, and that's how easy it is to update that. I could also make a more complex button where I could have buttons that adjust that, but I'm not going to get into that. You can just come in here and decide the duration. So these are the values that I'm going to use elsewhere, but they're local values, meaning they're just existing on this button. They're not actually available globally within Companion. So now that I've got these, remember my text here is just grab still, and it's a picture of a camera. And the feedback is based on the step. So if it's checking the step to see if it's 2, then it's going to show up as the smiley face. And if it is, where are we, 3, then it's going to show up with this time difference equation, which I'll show in a bit. Where are we? Time difference. So this is, remember back over here, under our time operations, we can come down here and we got the time diff. So we're saying time, capital D for diff, parentheses, and then whatever the from time is, and then the to time value. So it's comma separated in here. And if I come back over to here, you'll see I've got the same thing here. The time difference between, where is it? This one, hours, minutes, seconds, which is just the internal clock. So that would read out as 11, parentheses 23, parentheses 24, 25, 26. So that's the time of day. Versus the local time capture, and the local time capture was something that we're going to do here, which is we've got this, if we've hit step 3, what we're executing is setting a local variable with expression. So I'd be coming down here and set local variable with either raw value or expression. I'm doing expression in this case. And I'm saying I want to use the time capture variable that I've created, and I'm basically putting in the variable time of day. So whatever that is currently reading out as is going to be stamped when I press this step 3, is going to be stamped into the local variable. So that's what's then creating this time difference as time progresses past when it was stamped. Back to 3 here. Okay, so that's determining when it was pressed. Then I'm saying wait for this amount of time, which is basically my number, which was, I think I had 7 in there, didn't I? Times 1,000, because this is in milliseconds. So this is going to wait 7 seconds, and then it's going to execute ATEM 1, 2, or 3, depending on what is selected. I've got ATEM 1 selected, so let's just deal with that. So when ATEM 1 is selected, then capture ATEM 1 still, and ATEM 2 and 3 won't fire because it doesn't equal 2 or 3. And then lastly, I'm returning step 3 back to step 1 so that it can be pressed again. All right, let's go back to feedbacks, because this is the one that's a bit more fun. Because you could just have it as a countdown, but if you don't have the feedback, then you're not quite ready for the photo. So in this grab still button here, if I hold this down, it should show me 7 seconds. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, cheesy smile. And we come over to here, and you can see my cheesy smile is here in the slot 35 was just taken there with a countdown. But also, because when I've held it down, it's moved to step 3. So now it's true that when I do an internal button check step, it is 3. It's going to make these changes. So I can always just invert this to see what this equals out as. So you can see that, you know, we're 38 seconds past when we took that when we took that picture. And so this is what is reading out here is the time difference between the current time when it was captured plus the local duration. So and then I've just changed like the font size, and I've inverted the background to be bright so that it is highlighted and that kind of stuff. But they're the changes that you can make to make a fun timing button. All right. If we have any questions as you go along, drop them in, because I can answer them in a second. We're going to get to we've got like 1 or 2 more, and then we can wrap up. So partly on what I was just showing you there was sort of countdown clock related. So I just wanted to show how you could create a end of show countdown clock to display how much time is left on your live stream. And so I'm going to jump over to here. So I have this button here is just showing internal time, hours, minutes, seconds, and you can see it's 11:28 a.m. just went there exactly, 00. And so that's just counting. But instead of the time of day, I might want to say, hey, I want to end at 11:02 is actually what I've got in my clock here, which I'm going to go a little bit over that. And so show me how much time is left between now and the end of show. And so to do that, we can use this button here. So I've got end show is in 1 minute and 30 seconds is what's showing up here. And this is pulling from, so I've got a button which I've turned into an expression by clicking this here. I wanted to add in text to this, and so that's where I've put this backtick here, and then I've got my show end, and then I've got a \n, which is a new line, so I can push it onto a new line. And then I've got dollars, and then this parentheses here, and you can see on the other end I've got the parentheses and the back tick to close that out. And so now the actual function is in here. So we've got, where are we? 2 things going on here. It's like it's a variable within like a function within a function. So we've got the time difference, like we just talked about, in terms of get the time difference between the current time of day and the variable custom clock show end string. So this is just a variable. Let me just open this one up and get this one closed. If I go to my variables, custom variables, and I'll filter for that one. And so you can see here, I've got a variable, a custom variable that I created. I've called it clock show end string, and I've set it to 11:30:00. And so that's what that is, equaling, and we literally just went past that. So that's where I'm now running negative seconds there. And so I've got that, but then I've also got, let me see, seconds to timestamp. Okay, so that's this bit, the time difference between that. But then around that, I've also got seconds to timestamp, and then I've got comma, and then hours, minutes, seconds is the format. If we go back over here, we've got seconds to timestamp here, and then where are we? Seconds to timestamp, and you got the seconds and the format. So that's what I'm using here, and you can use hours, minutes, seconds, or you could just use minutes, seconds. And so what I can do here is, this is a small button, right? But if I wanted to up here have a big end of show, I could paste it up here. I'd get rid of this. And this one, seconds to, wait a second, scroll down, get rid of that. And so it's my negative value here, hours, minutes, seconds, and if I delete this, hours, okay, so now I've got hours, and then we got VV, and then I can scroll down and make that into minutes. Negative, I gotta do more on that. Seconds, okay. These have all got the negative around it, so I'd have to do the, where is it? I forget what it was. Absolute. It's probably that ABS. So if we go ABS parentheses and scroll down, another parentheses 2. I think that's right. Is that right? I have to work on that. That's not right. I do remember doing this before, but you want to get, I want to return a non-negative number here, like to display big text, because I'm negative 2 minutes and 42 seconds past the end of the show here, which I've done elsewhere. I can't remember exactly how to do that. Oh no, that is right, 2. Yeah, no, I had that right. I just got thrown by the fact that it went 2 instead of 1. Like the 1 minute went over to 2. ABS. Let me turn in that. Okay, 2. There we go. Now it's 3 minutes. ABS. Let's put that one in too. And so this is an example of doing a function. ABS. And down here. Okay. Let's, for example, if we come in here and we change our show time to like 11:45, then you can see now I'm saying I've got 11 minutes and 26 seconds until the end of the show. And so then, you know, you can always create other buttons that are going to update this current value. I have this in my profiles using let me start over here, using the clock. So I have a clock page where I can actually, so 11, where are we? 11:45 is what I have in here, but I have this so I can just go, just say I wanted to be 11:40, I'd go, what do we got? 11:40:00. So that's the time that's in registering here, and then I'm going to save it to end of show. And so now my end of show variable has been updated to 11:40, and then it's calculating, it's showing that the end of show is going to be in 5 minutes and 26 seconds. So that's how you can kind of build that. Just a quick note on that one, which is clock, because this is pretty useful for people, I think, is if you click on, me get over to show you on Supersource. The way I do like a number pad is just using this concat expression here. So I have, expand that out. I have a variable called string store. So it's like a place where I'm storing a string. And I'm saying concat this variable plus comma 1. So then, you know, for example, up here is comma 8. And so it's basically saying take that variable and add 8 on there or add 6 on there. And so that's where, as I am pressing these numbers, I'm inputting them. Let me just scroll over here so you can see in this input field when I'm typing in 40/30. So if I wanted to end at 11:40 and 30 seconds, that's where I can temporarily store that into a variable and then push that variable into wherever I want to end the show, for example, is how I do that. But useful for, you know, calculator type things, or like the other way you could build this out is, you know, VLC. If you've got hundreds of playback clips rather than having hundreds of buttons, you might want to, you know, or slide decks, you know, in a PowerPoint presentation, maybe you want to go to like slide 53, you could go 5-3 bang, rather than having an array of, you know, having to find slide 53 on an array of buttons. So bear that in mind, because that is a useful one. All right, one of the last tips, I think it's the last tip. Yeah, last tip before Q&A. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat because we're going to get out of here, is multi-step buttons. So this is another way to use an expression to jam a lot onto a button in a way that is actually easy to build out across. Like a lot of the challenges with, I think, Stream Decks and like live streaming programming, whether it's video or audio, is you've got a lot of inputs and outputs. And so you can build a button and you go, that's great, but then you need 40 of them or 80 of them, and they all need small changes. And so you don't want to manually build every single button because it's way too long. So this is a multi-step button that I'm going to show you that I am able to control my Supersource page across 3 ATEMs and 2 Supersources. So this will be coming to my DJF5 profile update. But I just want to show you because I thought it was pretty cool in terms of how to do that. Another trick is that you can actually, where are we? Supersource. I'm going to go over here. All right, Supersource. So I have my ATEM Supersource, and I can control box. Let's go box 2, for example. So I can move this box back and forth like this. But these buttons are currently controlling box 2 on Supersource 1 on ATEM 1. But if I want to control ATEM 3, Supersource 2, box 4, I would have to build out pages and pages and pages of buttons to control it. Or I could find a way to use these custom variables to put it all onto one page. The challenge with some of these things is like the actual action commands are hard-coded, and so I'm sort of getting around that by building a lot of steps. So this is a step progression expression, which you can see here, parseVariables. So I'm basically saying, you know, take into account that the fact that I've got you know, 3 ATEMs and 2 Supersources, and I have 4 boxes. These are the variables for ATEM, Supersource, and box. 4 boxes, 2 Supersource, and 3 ATEMs. So that gives me 24 variables of different steps that could be hit. And so I can build my button 1, and then I can just duplicate it and make a small change. So button 2 now is box 2, ATEM 1, but all the same parameters of adjusting these offset properties here. So, because I mean, these are hard coded. There's no variable fields to just like, you know, put in a box to custom variable and change the variable and then it targets a different box. You've actually got to build this out. So what I've got is ATEM1 is going to be boxes 1 to 8. So that's ATEM1, Supersource 1 has 4 boxes, so that's 1 to 4, and then Supersource 2 on ATEM1 is going to be 5, 6, 7, 8. And then 9 is going to be ATEM2, Supersource 1, box 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's pretty logical. But I just need to know that if I've set my custom variable, that it's going to hit those steps. And this is the equation to do that. So for example, if I type in Supersource, you'll see custom SS equals 1 at the moment, but it can also equal 2. If I type in ATEM, you'll see it currently equals 1, but it could equal 1, 2, or 3. And then my box active last pressed box is 2, but you know, if I select box 4, it's changing which box I'm selecting here. And you'll see that my steps are changing here too. See, so step 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if I select box 1, I'm actually selecting step 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if I select Supersource 2, which doesn't actually have one on this ATEM, but that's where I'm 5, 6, 7, 8. And then if I jump back to and select Supersource, ATEM 2, and I come into my Supersource, and I'm on Supersource 1, box 1, you see that's button 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's a logical sequence that plays out there. And know that you can actually just go to ChatGPT and ask it that. So that's what I have done just to work out this math, because I was like, didn't want to mess around with trying to figure it out. So in ChatGPT, I told it I needed, you know, a whole bunch of things. You know, sort of gave it my parameters of I want this to equal this, and I want it to be laid out in this way. And then it gave me this. So it's going to say ATEM 1, Supersource 1 is boxes 1, ATEM Supersource 1, box 2, box 4 is going to equal 8, 9, 24. So it gives me a bit of a feedback. I think, where is that? Is that right? No. Is this what I'm looking for? It was up here somewhere. I swear I had it. It gave me this whole chart. Maybe that's it. ATEM. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, it's just not a full chart. Okay, so output mapping is ATEM1, Supersource 1 is going to be step 1. And so these are the different steps. So once you get up to Supersource 3, button 6, I think this might be something different. Anyway, you can go to ChatGPT and it'll give you these answers, and you can copy that in and paste it in there, so it's a bit of a cheat. But that's where that parsing variables and assigning different steps is coming from. And so once I've got my 24 steps, I can then also go into my feedbacks. Actually, I haven't done it for this because this doesn't really need feedbacks because it's just stepping across. But I did for, what do I do for? I did feedbacks for something. Oh, I've got my on-off here. So I can like turn a box on or off. I think, where are we? I'm on entirely the wrong ATEM. There you go, ATEM1, ATEM1, Supersource, box 2, and I can turn this on or off. So this button here, I wanted a button, so if I long press this, it's going to turn it on or off. I've built that functionality into it. But I also wanted a button where if I've selected it, I can just sort of turn it on or off very easily. So, but this button has to work across all of these ATEMs of 24 of them, and it needs to be able to give me the feedback of whether it's on or off, so that if I turn it off, it, you know, I've selected box 2 and it's showing me that it's on, selecting box 1, it's showing me that it's off. And so that comes from feedbacks. And if I minimize this, you can see that I've got essentially 24 step buttons, because this is what is nice about this, is like once you've got this equation in there and your logic is this many ATEMs, I should turn my box back on, huh? Hello. This many I've got 3 ATEMs which have 2 supersources and 4 boxes, and you've laid out all your steps, then you don't actually need to do anything fancy after that, because you can just use the feedback. If you scroll down to check step, is what you do, check step. And it's just saying, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is pretty basic, but that reflects something really intelligent, which is you have, if you're on step 13, or I don't know what 13 is, let's say if you're on step 24, that's predetermined that you're on ATEM 3, Supersource 2, box 4. But you don't have to build a Boolean feedback that reflects that. You can just say step 24. So starting at step 1 here, I've got this conditionalize existing feedbacks. So I'm saying check step. If this button is on number 1, then show Supersource box state is the feedback. So ATEM 1 Supersource box. Where's the box state? This one is how that pops up. You can see that's yellow by default. And so then you can apply that to each different step and just set whether it should be ATEM 1, box 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I'm just going to delete that one. I went for more of a green color here. And I've just changed it to the background color is going to change, the text is going to go black, and then my text itself is going to say on instead of, by default, it says off. And that is only going to show up if I have the right box and ATEM selected. So that's a neat way to use that, and I like that. So you should do that. All right. Q&A, if you have any questions, drop them in chat now, because I'm going to jump off pretty soon. We've been an hour and 22 minutes, I can tell by my clocks down here. Okay, we've got jeggubb. Joining from Los Angeles, thanks for your stream. I use Companion during recording podcasts on an ATEM, and you've given me tons of tips and ideas to better my Companion setup. Thanks for the feedback. I'm glad that has helped. That is like my main goal here on the channel, is to teach people how to automate their live streaming process so that you can focus on the content, and that the technical stuff, you can sort of preset that and just run through a random show, or have triggers or automations that take care of things for you. It saves you sanity, because I feel like live streaming is probably, well, I don't know, I'm gonna make a broad statement that it's like the pinnacle of media, like I feel like in terms of complexity, this is not to denigrate this, because I also shoot photography, but if I think of photography, it's kind of, it's like one image at a point in time. And so, you're not worrying about sound, you're not worrying about, external sounds around you, or capturing a steady shot over a period of time. It's like one image. So that's not to say that it's not complex, because there's definitely a form of art and knowing when to capture it and all that kind of stuff. But then you have like video production where you're capturing sound, and you got to think about your lighting over time, any camera movement, also the editing of how that all comes together. But it's usually like something that's shot and then edited, so there's a lot of room for improvements. And then I think you come to live streaming, which is not only the technical aspect of getting the picture and the sound and the lighting right, but then there's also the technical things of making sure that you're encoding and your internet connection, and I don't know what else, just, making sure you hit record, making sure the web presenter is streaming, and then you've got to have the human element of, actual delivery and, executing on a live show. And if you're doing it on YouTube, it's probably a small budget, and it's probably something like what I'm doing here, in terms of I'm doing all the technical stuff, and I'm also doing all of the talking. And so the more that I can put the technical stuff into a very sort of simplified format means that I have just everything I need within basically 32 buttons is kind of how I see it, although you can add more buttons in. So something to consider. All right, it seems like that is all of the questions. It's a pretty technical one today, so if you got this far in, you get a gold star because that's a lot of talking about very nerdy things in video production world. But I like it because there's a certain amount of problem solving that goes into this, and when you find a function that just kind of really simplifies your process, it's, I don't know, it's just the problem solving aspect of it I really enjoy in terms of putting these profiles together and being able to control things and make them more simple on the front end for people. And expressions can get very complex, and some of the syntax and the understanding the punctuation and where all that goes can take some time, and sometimes I'm still building like compound expressions within things and I'm like, this should work, why doesn't it work? And then you realize you missed a parenthesis somewhere and then suddenly it all clicks. So I would say just if you got through today's live stream and it made sense to you, go back to that document that has all of the, where are we? Over here on the getting started. That has all of these things in them, and just read through that slowly and find the one that you're looking for and apply it, and then do a new thing. Don't worry about like trying to digest all of this at once, because even if you do, I feel like, then you don't look at it for 6 months and you've forgotten everything. So just know that the document is there and you can always lean back on that. All right, well, hopefully that was helpful in terms of learning more about how to use expressions within Companion. davidjoshuaford.com is my website that contains some free profiles that you can download for the ATEM and the Canon PTZ cameras if you just want to sort of get up and running. And then there's some more like in-depth profiles which have like really like in-depth control over the cameras and the ATEM switches. So go check those out as well. Until next week, take care. I'll see you then. Bye.